Welcome to the Momentum Matters podcast, where we have courageous conversations with women leaders. You'll hear about their accomplishments, experiences, challenges, and best advice. If you're inspired by women who've overcome the barriers and gone on to do extraordinary things, you're in the right place. I'm Karen Terradas, CEO of Social U, a digital marketing firm specializing in social media management, training, and consulting. I'm pleased to introduce to you our host, April Benitolo. April is the CEO at Momentum Leaders, a Birmingham-based nonprofit on a mission to advance women in leadership.
Hi, this is April Benitolo, and welcome to Momentum Matters. Our guest today is Ulrike Seminati. Ulrike is a leadership and communication coach with over 20 years of experience in shaping award-winning communication and leadership programs around the world. Building on her experience as a C-level executive, Ulrike combines her knowledge of how to succeed in the corporate world with powerful self-development techniques to help women lead with charisma and authenticity. Ulrike also believes that female leadership is one of the biggest untapped potentials in the world, something I absolutely agree with. This led to her founding Empowering Female Leaders, a company which helps women leaders and entrepreneurs flourish and confidently carry out their vision. Ulrike, hello. Thank you so much for joining us on Momentum Matters.
Thank you for having me. It's a great pleasure to be here.
Can you tell us where you are and what time it is?
So I am in Switzerland right now, and it's the end of the afternoon, 4 p.m.
Okay. And what kind of weather do you have today?
We have rainy weather today, which is like extraordinary this year because we had such extremely warm and dry weather. It was even a disaster. Rivers are drying out here right now. It's kind of crazy actually this year. And today it started raining, and that's really a great pleasure for our garden, who was suffering so much the past 2-3 months.
We have had an extreme heat here in Alabama for a couple of weeks, and today is the first day it's kind of cloudy, maybe going to rain, and we are getting a little break from the heat. So we are all excited about that.
Yeah, same situation.
So, Ulrike, I know you travel all over the world delivering leadership and communication training to professionals in a variety of industries. But I also understand that has not always been your work. So I was hoping you would share with our audience what you did leading up to that work.
So I was starting my career actually as an assistant, and I climbed up the whole hierarchy ladder to become a C-level executive 20 years later, roughly. And I was working always in corporate communications. So I was doing a lot of external campaigns, then a lot of internal campaigns. And this tied in very closely with corporate culture, for example, with values, and ultimately also with leadership behaviors. And when I was in the C-level role, in this very strategic role, I realized that actually you can have the best internal communications campaigns in the world. You can spend millions on that. But if your leaders are not able to communicate in an authentic way, it's not happening. I mean, it's just saying on the surface, and people will not change their mindset. You will not get this engagement and that motivation. And that brought me then to the next point where I thought, okay, if I want to change something in that area, I have to step out of the corporate world myself. And I have to come from the outside, because people always listen much more to experts from the outside, to make a change in different companies across the world, in different entities and industries, to just change this way how leaders behave. And that finally brought me then to focusing particularly on female leaders, because the challenges are different still today. And it's not only because of frameworks and external circumstances. It has a lot to do with the mindset that women have, because we were brought up in a specific way. Across the globe, by the way, it's quite interesting how many commonalities we have, even if we are in very different countries. And that's what I'm doing today. That's how I came up with this idea of changing the way how people behave in the corporate world, at work, so that they bring in their full self, their authentic self, actually.
And you do a lot of work with women, I believe, on overcoming self-limiting thoughts. And I'm curious, in your work, because you do also work with men, why do you think it is that women have so many more self-limiting thoughts than men seem to have?
I think it's in the upbringing. So I was obviously also trying to do some research and find out what studies say about that. It's not super, super explicit, but it's about upbringing. Because as little girls, we were often told to not make a fuss, to be nice and friendly, this kind of thing. We have different expectations that we experienced from adults when we were children than boys did at that same time. And I think that brings women to a point where they think they always have to be nice and perfect, always look good as well. That's another thing, the visual aspect, the outside aspect. But it's always about fitting to the expectations actually of other people. That's much stronger in women. And I think it has to do with this upbringing that girls often are less allowed as well, making less mistakes, being less dirty. For example, parents are more worried about getting them, that they injure themselves because they jump from a too high place or whatever it is. And all of these little things that children are told when they were small make a difference then in the adult world, because the expectations, we set them ourselves then and think that we believe that that's our reality, whereas it was just something that we experienced very early on probably in our lives.
And how do you think that differs from men?
Well, when they're adults or when they're children?
Both. Yes.
So when they're children, I think little boys, today it's maybe a bit different, but not so much if I look to my surroundings, how they educate their children automatically in a way where it's different a little bit. I think boys are much more encouraged to just try out things. It doesn't matter if they fail. It doesn't matter if they come home with bloody knees and all of that. It's just a bit of a different attitude. And this is why they finally, when they're adults, have more of this courage to just try something out. And so what if I fail? Or so what if it's not liked by whoever? Because that was okay-ish when they were small. And that is a difference that I see very much in the behavior of women versus men. I'm often very careful with that because I don't like to stereotype too much. It's not all women are the same, all men are the same. But there are some big lines. The level of self-criticism in women is really higher, definitely. It's very, very high. More women are perfectionists as well. And that obviously is the ultimate level of self-criticism which you can get, because it's never, ever good enough. Never. As a perfectionist, you never think it was good enough what you did. Even if there's only a missing 1%, you will just blame yourself for this 1%. And in men, it's different. I mean, there's these famous numbers, which you have certainly heard and which we see quite often, that men apply for a role when they have 60% of the qualifications. And for many women, even 90% of the qualifications is still not enough to feel safe to apply for that role. And that's a typical way of how we think about ourselves as women versus men. And this is holding us back because we miss, obviously, a lot of opportunities if we don't go for them, because we think, oh, I'm not up to it. I have to learn more. I have to get on another qualification to apply for that role. Whereas men think, oh, I go for that role, the qualifications, I can still do them afterwards. So it's a totally different way of thinking.
I came across some research that was done recently on also the hiring end of that equation is looking for women to have 90%, 95%, 98% of the qualifications, but they will take less qualifications from men. So sometimes I do also think that as women, we think that we are doing this to ourselves, and yet it is a thought pattern or a situation that is actually reinforced by the environment that we're moving in. A hiring manager, a recruiting person, or the bosses that we work for, that a woman won't get a promotion until she's proven herself 10 times over, but a man can get a promotion based on his potential.
Yeah, and exactly, that's exactly right. And what is interesting is that often women even do that more to women than men do it to women.
Yes.
So, yeah, there's even more competition between women. They are much stricter with other women than men are with women. So we, as a community of sisterhood, which we do not have actually, unfortunately, do this to ourselves.
It gets very complicated.
Yeah.
What so what is it that you actually coach women to do in order to move past some of these self-limiting thoughts?
First of all, they have to understand them. It really starts with awareness. It's the basis of everything. And most people are not aware they're aware that they don't have enough self-confidence. That's why they come to me most of the time. They're aware that they have potentially an imposter syndrome, but they're not aware of the full extent of this. They don't understand what exactly happens in their mind in specific situations where they procrastinate, where they do not step out of their comfort zone, where they will not ask for a salary increase, for example, because they don't know it. They've never looked really behind their own scenes. So what I'm helping is that they understand, first of all, what inner voices are telling me what in which situation. And this inner voice or this belief that I can hear there, where does it come from? That's interesting to know. Doesn't help so much to remove it, but still is a kind of piece of information. But then it's really about understanding where does this come into play in other areas, because most of the time we think it's just in this specific situation and realize that, oh my God, it's a whole pattern that goes across a variety of situations in my life. And to understand just the sheer extent of certain things helps to bring them to the surface. And like this, people can then are not longer victims of their own thoughts, basically, because most of the time these thoughts are operating from the background. You have 80,000 thoughts per day. How many are you aware of? A handful, probably. If I ask you in the evening, what have you thought today? What were your thoughts today? But getting this awareness, not about all 80,000, obviously, but about your patterns and be able to take a distance from them. That's what I'm working on with people. And the awareness piece is obviously the first step, and it's a very important one. But then it comes really into training yourself, into understanding how you can let them go. And I'm not a big fan of trying to push them away, eradicate them, this kind of thing. That's nice, but it's not possible. So they will be with you. You were brought up with that. And the older you are, the more they're ingrained in your way of being. But at least you can shift to something else. So I really help that people take a shift, the focus shifts to something else. So even if these thoughts are there, I see you, I hear you, but I decide something else now. And this decision which you can make is in the beginning very unusual, feels very artificial, like, hey, can I decide that really? But over time, if you do that more and more often, you start bearing the fruits of it. You start to see that actually something changes inside of you. It's getting easier. You're believing yourself a bit more to what you actually want to be. And that is always a magical shift when these kind of things go to the other 50%, let's say, to the positive side of your beliefs.
Do you have specific practices that you do yourself on a daily basis, like words of affirmation or meditation, those kinds of things that help you to practice what you preach?
Yes, indeed, I do. And it has evolved quite a lot over time. And it still evolves according to my own needs and according to what I feel is working or where the pain points are, because they evolve. The more you grow, well, the more also your pain points will evolve. So what I do, I have a ritual in the morning. I do that really every morning. Usually I start with a physical workout, a little bit, at least 15 minutes. It doesn't have to be huge, but that helps me to bring my whole body also a bit more into motion, have a bit of energy. And then I really sit calmly down and do what you could call a meditation. And it's a mix of different things. So what I usually do is really calming down myself, this whole breathing techniques, classic meditation for maybe 3 minutes, 4 minutes, just to wind down my thoughts and getting this kind of empty space in my head. And then I'm doing different things. Sometimes I feel I have to do a visualization of my desired future state or of my desired future success or my next step or something like that. And it's a concrete visualization of a situation. But these days, for example, I'm more often into a piece of affirmation. I start first with the gratitude affirmation, and this brings me real energy. It's quite fascinating, the simple word of saying thanks to the universe, how much that opens up suddenly to feel some other things. And I became over time by doing this pretty receptive. So I feel, what are my underlying emotions right now? Do I have a bit of worry today? Do I have a bit of anxiety? Do I have just a very clean feeling of positive energy? That happens also very often. It's great. But if I have these like nagging, worrying things, I kind of realize that they're there, acknowledge, okay, I see you, you're here today, it doesn't matter, I still go my own way, this kind of shifting thing. And then I have my own affirmations which I use, and they shift over time. If I feel that I need to affirm something because I'm going to something bigger myself, and I feel, whoa, when I say this sentence, there's resistance in myself or disbelief, then I know that is an opportunity for growth, actually. If you say affirmations, you're fully behind it and feel it perfectly. I still do some of these, obviously, to maintain them. But the growth is in the affirmations that you do not fully believe yet. And I'm always looking into what is holding me back, because there are always little things that are still around or that come into play because the situation changes. And that's what I do every morning, like 10 minutes minimum. If I have not enough time, sometimes up to 30. If I do a bit more, I'm also checking my money mindset, if it's still all okay, if there's anything that is not clear in there. So it's a bit of an internal checking that I do in the morning.
So you mentioned a little bit the money mindset, and that is something I know that you talk with to a lot of women, probably all people, but women especially have some specific barriers in thinking about money and a lack of comfort in asking for what they are worth. And I would love to have some of your insights and just jump into that topic a little bit.
Yeah. So what I always ask people first is, can you say the sentence, I deserve to be rich, without feeling any doubt or guilt? And nearly nobody can say that. It's my personal checking sentence as well. If I can't say it without guilt or any kind of doubt, I know, well, something is coming back. But that's the first starting point. It's then really about finding out what you think about money or what you think about rich people. Very often people have a negative image of rich people, basically. And the problem is, even if you might know rich people who are bad people, but you certainly know also some poor people who are bad people. But the thing is that as long as you think that rich people are bad people per se, how can you become one of them? It's not possible. So whatever rich means to you. And this is actually where, can you hear my cat? I have to clap. My cat is meowing very loudly.
Rewind.
Exactly, rewind. I go back to the rich people piece. So when you believe that rich people are bad people, how can you possibly become one of them yourself? Obviously, you can't. And so I'm looking just into the different, sets of beliefs that people have about money and rich people, which is relatively easy to discover. When you ask people, they get quite quickly an awareness of that. But what I then do then, and this is always fascinating, I do a little mental exercise where I try to find out with which salary or yearly income, if they are entrepreneurs, they are actually comfortable with. And it's quite amazing in the negative way that most people have a salary they're comfortable with that is even lower than the one that they receive today. And this is why when they ask for a salary increase, they feel so uncomfortable because they already feel like an imposter and guilty with the salary they currently have. And you can change this. It's like an inner thermostat which you can raise. You can just blow it up to a number where it's really completely crazy in your belief. You say, wow, 1 million, I cannot make that per year ever, 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 ever. And then you tune it down again until you get to something that is actually higher than where you were starting from. And that's an exercise which I do sometimes in the morning as a self-checking as well, where I am at. What I'm allowing myself as a yearly revenue on my business for the moment, or as a monthly revenue on my business. And if I see that it shrinks again to what I have seen last week, for example, I don't do that every day, then I do this exercise of blowing it up again and of searching for what are the beliefs and the voices. So people get these voices from their parents or from their teachers or whenever. Again, it's often in the childhood that you were told what money is. Is it good? Is it bad? Does it spoil your character? All of these things. And you believe that. You have it in your mind. And just hearing this voice and understanding, yeah, I can hear you, but I decide to think differently. Again, it's the same way of not pushing back completely, acknowledging and going for something else.
Yeah, I love that so very much. I hear you, I acknowledge you, and I am choosing a different pattern, a different way of thinking.
Yeah, exactly. You're empowered to do so. Most people don't think they are, but you can be. And I think you need some encouragement from others, be it a coach, that's very helpful, someone who's behind you and telling you, no, no, seriously, it works. It will not work if you do this 5 minutes or if you do it just for one day or just 1 week and you give it up again. If you're 40 years old, you have 40 years of thought patterns, 40 years of experience. I mean, you have to create quite a lot of new mental experiences to work against that and to create something new and something more constructive for yourself. So it's like training a buddy who has never made sports, for example. You need to start. And in the beginning, it's hard. In the beginning, you feel, I will never make the progress that I want to make. But at some point, like with your buddy, there's this moment where you can feel, now suddenly, wow, suddenly I can run my 20 miles or I don't know what. Wow, I would never, ever have believed that 2 years ago. And this is where the miracle happens, where you realize, actually, I can achieve everything I want. I just have to give myself the means to do so.
I love the comparison with sports too, because it's true that we often think, I have this guilt, I'm not exercising enough. I don't make it to the gym. I don't have the right equipment. And all of those things, they do take organizing your time. And sometimes they take equipment. Sometimes they take money to be able to invest in being able to do the kind of exercise you want. But what happens in your mind is free.
Exactly.
You can do it at any time. I mean, at any time, during your day, you can say, I am beautiful and I am worthy and I deserve all of the things that I'm putting out there for myself.
Yes, exactly.
And it costs nothing.
Yeah, that's exactly right. It costs nothing, actually. You just apply these techniques and it's people say, I don't have time to do that. I say, no, you don't have time not to do that.
Correct.
Because if you do not have time now in your life, you're probably spending a lot of your time on things that you don't like to do. So if you want to change that one day, and even if it feels impossible because you're stuck in a job where you need the money and whatever, there's always something you can do. And literally, if you look at the time that you spend potentially on scrolling through social media or watching TV, you will find these 20 minutes per day.
Absolutely.
And you will find even another 20 minutes in the evening if you want to, for sure.
Or 2 hours.
You can, yeah. And if you feel that how beneficial this can be for you, then you'll realize that it's much better than comparing yourself to people on social media where they have all these retouched pictures and you think, oh, I will never be beautiful enough. I'm not enough. I'm not enough. I'm not enough.
Sure. So to hear you talking now, you have it all together, right? You have the morning routine and the affirmations and the techniques to overcome self-limiting thoughts and money issues. Has it always been that way for you?
No. No.
Help us to understand what it's like when before you get to this place.
Far away from it, really. I mean, people who know me even for a long time would not guess that. They always thought, she's really confident. She has it all, because I was also succeeding professionally and I was really good in my job. But inside, I was never satisfied. I was full of self-doubts. I all the time thought I had to play a role. And the higher I climbed up in the hierarchy, the worse it got, because the more I thought I have to fit into what a leader has to be, this kind of assertive, professional, rational person. And I wasn't that person. I was neither assertive by nature, professional, yes, but not this kind of, I wasn't rational in that sense. I was always pretty intuitive and emotional at the same time. So it was really something I squeezed myself into this way of being, because I thought I can't be myself. If I am myself, I will not step up the career ladder. I will not be accepted when I was then in this executive committee, continue to be accepted by the others. And at the end, this is extremely power draining, because you never feel good about yourself. I mean, I had years where I had amazing successes, won international awards for the campaigns I was managing, and still not more than a second I could celebrate myself, because I always looked into what is not good, what was not perfect. Like, if they had discovered that this wasn't perfect, I wouldn't have won this award. Completely crazy and totally useless way of thinking about yourself, basically, because everybody else was like amazed and I couldn't take that in. And no, it was not like that for a long time in my life. And even, I wouldn't say the older I got, the worse it got. It's not really true, but the more I got aware of it. Because when I was in my 20s, I was more like, I don't know, running automatically towards something. I never had a concrete career goal, but I loved working. I enjoyed the jobs that I had. I was really giving myself at 100% at work, and it was great and all of that. But inside of me, there was always this anxiety of not being good enough, maybe losing my job because of that, which is completely stupid. Because I was never fired in my life, but for 20 years, I was afraid to be fired one day. How crazy. I mean, what a waste of time, seriously. It's just thinking back now, I think like, how crazy is that? It's totally illogical. And still, I did it, and I see so many people who do it.
And I agree with you. I had an employee that was my, absolutely top performer, and she knew it. And yet every time I called her into a one-on-one room when she wasn't expecting it, every time she came in thinking this was the time that she was going to be fired. And it was always the time I was going to give her a promotion or a raise.
Yeah.
So why do we do this to ourselves?
I don't know. It's so ingrained in the way how we think about ourselves. It's unbelievable. And I think it's really it's time to step out of that, because just imagine you get rid of all of these negative thoughts and you just do the best you can and you're just proud of your achievements without reservation. How good could you feel about yourself? How differently would you take in compliments? How much easier, and this is another point is certainly interesting, how much easier would it become to promote your achievements? That's the thing as well. We do not promote our achievements. Why? Because we think we weren't good enough, because we think we're imposed and somebody will discover that, and I do not deserve actually this praise which I'm getting here. It's very counterproductive.
Yes. Yes. And do you think that, at least in your experience, you have been able to sort of overcome that with age? And yet with age, we also have, especially as women, a new set of doubts that come to us.
Yes, that is true. So with age, I think I got a bit more relaxed about myself, but it took some time. In my 30s, for example, where I was obviously, now I'm 49. So in my 30s, I was certainly much more beautiful and had a nicer skin and whatever you want, but I felt much less good about also my physical shape than I do today, because I thought still I need to be kind of perfect. And in this age, I had that feeling also that I'm losing my youth, because this is when it actually happens. When you step out of your 20s, 30, and then you move towards your 40s, I found this pretty difficult to accept that I'm not young anymore, what I thought is young. And when I moved over the 40 threshold, I started to feel better and a bit more relaxed about myself in general, because I think it also came with my life experience, with the fact that despite my imposter syndrome, I was still able to realize to some extent that I achieved something in my life. And that made me happy, because I'm an achiever person. So that gave me satisfaction to have some professional achievement here. But then I had to work really on myself to get to the stage where I'm now. That this wouldn't have happened just with age. And I know many people that with age, it's getting worse, because obviously you don't get younger, you do not get more beautiful. Objectively speaking, you don't. So it's changing, and you're changing, and you're not fitting anymore into what society thinks is beautiful and how people should look like, which are especially women, which you see on stage, because women always are younger than men when they are in the public sphere. And I needed to work on myself, not because of that, but in general, I just wanted to step into something else. And I felt there is more. You cannot just live your life like, bit headless in a certain way, because you're not aware of what's going on in yourself. And I somehow felt, I'm pretty sure that subconsciously something is steering me, like everyone. And I need to look into that. I was really curious to find out what is going on there. And I knew that I had some this whole thing about self-confidence, it started to isolate me in a certain way as well, because I became more and more introvert in my way of being as well. And somebody told me once, and a few years ago, and that was certainly one of the moments where I thought I have to change something. Somebody was telling me once, you seem to be arrogant. And that was really awkward to me, because I felt not having enough confidence, not promoting myself ever, which I actually didn't do. But I thought I'm arrogant because I was so distant. And I was distant because I was shy and not sure about myself.
Mhm.
And many people probably seem to be arrogant or cold or distant. And actually inside, they are just not sure about themselves at all. And that's when I realized that something is really wrong, because what I am actually and what people see has nothing to do with each other. So I need to change that. There's something that creates like an image or perception of myself from the outside that is not congruent with my inside. And I felt that there's something not right, and that is evolving into a direction where this gap is even opening more and more and more. And this is when I think this is when I started to be really interested in this whole psychological areas, into everything that comes with personal development, and into finding some techniques. And when I started my first coaching trainings to become a trainer, wow, that was really amazing. Because obviously when you do it the first time, it's like, wow, these things are possible. I can't believe it. And this is then you want more, and there is much more, and it's a journey. Yeah.
And if someone were to want to invest in that coaching or training, how would they go about that with you?
The easiest is simply to contact me. You just can have a look on my website as well. It's ulrikeseminati.com. So my pretty complicated German-Italian combined name. But
I'll be happy to share it in the show notes.
Yeah, to share the show notes. What I also have is a freebie. It's called Top 10 Achievers Lessons. And there I wrote it especially for women. So it's top proven principles that help you, to flourish and to land that leadership spot you're after, to become this person or this successful person that you want to be. And from there, you can just take it. I have a few online trainings as well, which I do in groups. I do one-on-one coachings, and I do in-house trainings for leaders. And there I do obviously mixed groups as well. And it's very strongly focusing then on communication, because that's the interface of everything. You can only communicate well when you communicate from the inside out. So it's not about communication skills as such. It's really about understanding who you are and coming from an authentic place, in a place of power, instead of a place where you just tag on some behaviors which you think you need to imitate. It's a totally different way of doing it.
But Ulrike, I could talk to you all day about these topics, and I know that I would leave feeling so much better. But we do have a limited amount of time, and I know that you are a very busy woman and getting prepared to move to Dubai. I mean, a huge step. So best of luck to you there.
Yes.
Not that you need luck, but you need good wishes. And so we wish you well in Dubai. And thank you so much for sharing your time and your expertise with us here today.
Thank you, April, for having me. It was a great pleasure to talk to you.
Thank you for listening to Momentum Matters. We invite you to subscribe to our podcast as we share more important conversations with women leaders. We would love for you to rate our show and share with women in your circle. We thank our sponsors for their support of our mission to advance women in leadership, including Regions Bank, Protective Life, and Blue Cross Blue Shield of Alabama. A full list of corporate partners can be found at momentumleaders.org/sponsors. We also want to thank the individual donors, Momentum alum, and volunteers for their commitment to see women succeed.